Now, yesterday, former Mineral Resources Minister Ngoako Ramatlhodi's testimony supports that of Cheryl Carolus' claims. He says the ANC was in a state of madness during former President Jacob Zuma's tenure. Now, according to Ramatlhodi, Zuma's defense of the Guptas and state capture was because they gave his children jobs. Ngoako gave explosive testimony yesterday. Here's Erin Bates with that report.
Please raise your right hand and say, "So help me God."
So help me God.
Introducing Advocate Ngoako Ramatlhodi, the first witness to so clearly put the former president front and center of state capture claims.
This relationship of yours with these guys is toxic. Why don't we end it? And we can talk as high and as loud as we like. When we finish, when you close the meeting, he says, those people are my friends because they helped my children when I was a persona non grata. They helped Duduzan, they helped Edward, they gave them jobs.
As for the ANC,
you can characterize that period as a season of madness in the organization. We couldn't understand the grip. You know, it's like a python, and when a python wraps itself around you, unless somebody takes out the tail from the soil, you are finished.
Once he was appointed minister, he claims alleged captors wasted no time.
I got a call from the president's son, Duduzani, Zuma, who wished to see me and convey his congratulations in person.
He reckons the aim was a pact with the Guptas and claims the Guptas hosted events at their Cape Town home during a mining indaba. They'd invite ministers and business people.
It was a show-off, as far as you are concerned, of this family showing that they've actually captured.
They were disrespectful of the president. They were disrespectful of the president, of the country. They were disrespectful of us.
Former SAA Chair Cheryl Carolus testifies next.
We will adjourn and then resume tomorrow at 10. We adjourn.
Erin Bates, Johannesburg.
Well, as you've just heard there, Advocate Ngoako Ramatlhodi becoming the first witness, really, to clearly put former President Jacob Zuma at the front and center of state capture claims. Now, he told the Zondo Commission of Inquiry that once he was appointed Minister of Mines, the so-called captors wasted no time. To unpack this, we're joined now by political analyst Karima Brown. Karima, I want to start this conversation with the background of why the state capture of inquiry is taking place, or what exactly it is investigating. And I want to go back to what the Public Protector's report said, because that's the context in which I want to place the Ngoako Ramatlhodi testimony here. Thuli Madonsela said at the time that the commission, once set up, will investigate complaints of alleged improper and unethical conduct by the president and other state functionaries related to alleged improper relationships and involvement of the Gupta family in the removal and appointment of ministers and directors at state-owned entities, resulting in improper and possibly corrupt award of state contracts and benefits to the Gupta family's businesses. Now, here's the question. Ramatlhodi says Zuma, quote-unquote, auctioned his executive authority to the Guptas. How significant is that statement in relation to what that commission is investigating?
I think so far it is the most significant connection that has been made, because after all, this Commission of Inquiry must establish whether an elected president outsourced his executive authority to a private family for his gain and their gain and the gain of their friends. And what Ngoako Ramatlhodi did yesterday was graphically detail precisely how that happened, via the president, via his son, and of course via the Guptas himself. In fact, for me, the most astounding thing that he said yesterday was that when the Guptas called, the president ran. and that the Guptas had a secretary that ran the president's diary in concurrency with that of the executive. So if you want examples of the way in which the president, according to Mr. Ramatlhodi, had basically ceded the country, its primary business, his executive authority, to a private family. Those were the examples. And of course, Mr. Ramatlhodi is an old hand. He's been a minister for a while. And he also understands where decisions get made. Remember, we're a party political system. So the party makes decisions. And then, of course, there's the separation between party and the state makes decisions. Here you had neither making the decisions. You had a private family making the decisions.
And here, this is the issue, Karima, or this is where, for me, it really got interesting, the testimony of Advocate Ramatlhodi, because what Gwede Mantashe the day before couldn't tell the Commission in terms of the granular detail of what actually went on. Gwede Mantashe couldn't tell the Commission that. All he could say was that the NEC came to a realization that state capture is indeed a reality. But Ramatlhodi gives this detail. Here's the next point then, Karima. He tells the Commission that when they would ask Zuma to cut ties with his family, he was very clear, the former president, that these people have taken care of my family, and they've given my children jobs. What does that tell us in terms of President Zuma's loyalty to the country and, of course, the oath of office that he took versus the interests of his family?
Look, the key issue here is, did President Jacob Zuma break the Executive Code of Ethics? And on the strength of Mr. Ramatlhodi's evidence, if it should be tested and verified, and of course he's given us dates, etc., and people have backed him up, President Zuma can be charged. President Zuma can be charged, in my view, with being in contravention of that Executive Code of Ethics, but he can even be charged with treason, because he was the #1 citizen in the country. He has the oath of office. He takes executive decisions. For example, ministers serve at his pleasure. He can hire and fire. And we know that, of course, ministers have spoken about how the Guptas have allegedly offered them executive positions. It meant that they felt that they spoke with the authority of President Jacob Zuma. Fikile Mbalula said in an NEC meeting, the highest decision-making body of the African National Congress, that he was appalled at the fact that he was told he was going to be the sports minister by a member of the Gupta family and not the president. So it meant the Gupta family knew what the president was going to do. The only way they could know that is if the president discussed that prior to discussing it with his executive, and there he is in clear violation.
Karima, you speak about the NEC, and that becomes the next point I want to explore, yes, because Ramatlhodi says, yes, the ANC NEC was paralyzed, yes, quote unquote, yes, to take any action against the former president. It then brings me to my next question to you. To me, that's an indicator that the NEC has got to change its decision-making process so that it puts the country first. Is that not a talking point? Look,
if you look at the ANC historically, how NEC meetings happen, as you know, there is no voting, there's discussion, robust discussion.
And consensuses are taken at the end.
Consensus is taken, but here's the problem. Traditionally, the president is the last to speak. So say, for example, people raise the question of the Gupta's interest in trying to elbow a minister to give them a contract or whatever malfeasance people must report. It gets discussed. People take decisions. The president then closes the meeting. And what Ngoako Ramatlhodi said, in fact, he said it. He said the president would just speak as if no one else had spoken about the problems. And of course, this is the organizational challenge for the African National Congress, because historically, the respect that you had for the president was that the president was above the fray. The president wasn't involved in the factions. The president wasn't involved in whatever malfeasance was going on. So the president could be trusted to summarize the meeting in such a way that it is an accurate reflection of what the discussion was. What you had here was that President Jacob Zuma would literally cherry pick what he wants to talk about.
Become part of a faction.
Exactly, and led that faction. And more importantly, if you, for example, ask the Secretariat for the minutes of the meetings, you will see the discussions, but you will see the closing remarks of President Jacob Zuma, often completely ignoring the sentiment. But what was interesting also for me, Kole, is that there's this idea that the ANC is this monolith and that everyone just allowed President Zuma, and it's simply not true. The Commission is telling us that, but also the actions of individuals, whether they were veterans, ministers, whistleblowers. People had a problem and they tried to find a place to speak about it. And what we mustn't forget in this explanation of the Zondo Commission of Inquiry, this president faced 2 motions of no confidence in his own organization. So there was resistance to them, to what he was doing. But the organizational culture of the African National Congress doesn't allow for that kind of debate to happen.
Final question, Karima, and very quickly. Could Ramatlhodi's testimony be the single most important testimony to cajole President Jacob Zuma to finally wish to cross-examine someone at that commission? Because so far he's shown no interest. Or are we going to see an embarrassing situation where the former president is subpoenaed to appear before that commission?
It could very well be that if we look at President Jacob Zuma's track record in relation to how he responds to forums, he operates on the basis of necessity. So, for example, for 10 years, he argued that he hasn't actually been given the right to defend himself. And when the matter came to the crux, his legal team actually admitted they had no legal defense, which is why he's sitting with a personal cost order of 10 million rand. The point here is that President Jacob Zuma is going to try and get others to discredit the process. That's why you're already seeing the proxies outside the commission trying to cast aspersions on what is happening, calling the evidence leader a bastard, calling Pravin Gordhan a dog. And we're going to see the ramping up of that kind of spurious language because there is an attempt to still invalidate this commission. And the irony, of course, is that it is President Jacob Zuma under tremendous pressure, but ultimately that signed off on this commission, yes.
All right, Karima Brown, thank you very much, political analyst, giving us her sense of the testimony of former Mineral Resources Minister Ngoako Ramatlhodi.